There are moments in life that make us question whether the world is truly what we think it is. A strange glance, a detail that repeats without reason, or a fragment in time that seems to break any of these could be the beginning of a nightmare. In today's video, I'll be sharing 4 true stories, chilling, bizarre, and nearly impossible to explain, all taking place in places that seemed completely harmless. Are you ready to step into the dark? Story 1. The Church Girl and the Forest Secret. I'm from New Hampshire, and this happened when I had just turned 23. It was one of those messy chapters in life when you've just ended a 2-year relationship and start questioning what the hell you're doing with your life. To get away from that lost feeling, I started going to church with my grandmother every Sunday morning. She's very devout, especially after my grandfather, a well-respected war veteran, passed away. I wanted to be there for her, but deep down I was also looking for something, maybe comfort, maybe faith. That's when I saw her. A girl I'd never seen before, sitting a few rows ahead. Curly black hair falling to her shoulders, hazel eyes dark and still like calm water. In a small community like ours, not recognizing someone at church was rare. After the service, I went up to introduce myself. Her name was Kaylee. There was something magnetic about her. She dodged questions about her past and family, only smiling and saying, "If you want to know more, you'll have to take me out sometime." We started texting. She told me she'd just moved to the area with her mom, trying to get away from an abusive stepfather. Her biological dad, according to her vague words, was even worse, so they had to cut him off entirely and relocate. The more we talked, the more I felt like I needed to protect her. A week later, I took her out for dinner and a movie. It was a perfect night until I decided to drive her around afterward through one of the winding back roads outside of town. That's when things changed. As we cruised down a quiet stretch, Kaylee suddenly turned to me and began speaking, but not in English. She was muttering in some strange tongue. It sounded almost like Old French, but warped. Before I could even ask what was going on, her eyes rolled back, pupils gone. Her head tilted slightly, and her mouth kept moving, speaking nonsense in a slow, eerie rhythm. My face went pale. I nearly lost control of the car and swerved toward the metal guardrail. I pulled over shaking and called 911 with trembling fingers. While I waited, Kaylee kept mumbling, her head twitching slightly like her body was being puppeteered by something else. Then suddenly, silence. She turned her head toward me. Her eyes were normal again, and without saying a word, she opened the car door and bolted into the woods. I shouted her name, but the wind and rain swallowed my voice. When the cops arrived, I told them everything. I could tell they thought I was crazy, but they filed a report anyway. They found no footprints, no cameras caught anything, nothing. I looked for Kaylee at church the next Sunday. She wasn't there. I tried her Instagram, gone. Her phone number disconnected. My friend even tried texting from a different number. This number does not exist. I went back to church and asked around. No one knew her. No one had ever seen her. And that's when it hit me. I didn't have a single photo with her. Not one shred of evidence she'd ever existed. All I had was a memory, a haunting one that refuses to fade. Story 2. The Ones in the Rain. I never thought a rainstorm in the middle of the desert could be the scariest moment of my life, but I was wrong. That year, I was driving my beat-up 2012 Volvo back to Nevada after a trip to visit a friend. It was the kind of car that probably should have been buried years ago. The electronics were dying, the engine was unreliable, and worst of all, the windshield wipers didn't work at all. But since it rarely rains in Nevada, I never thought it would matter. Until that day. I was crossing the desert when the rain started. At first, just a few drops. Then suddenly a full-on storm, lightning, sheets of rain, zero visibility. Panicking, I pulled off the road and drove deep into the empty land away from the highway to avoid getting rear-ended. Not a single car passed by for over an hour. The rain kept hammering down. Night was falling fast. And that's when I started feeling uneasy, like something or someone was watching me. Even though there was nothing out there but dirt, rocks, and darkness. I kept glancing out every window, saw nothing, but the feeling wouldn't leave. And then I saw the lights, not lightning. These were sharp white beams of light, flashing, moving, getting closer. I froze, body tense as wire. Then instinct kicked in. I flung open the door, ran out into the rain, and ducked behind a large boulder nearby. Soaked and shaking, I peeked at my car from a distance. The lights kept moving in, and then I saw them. 3 figures, each one carrying a flashlight. They weren't walking normally, they were staggering, circling my car slowly like they were searching for something. But the way they moved was wrong. The flashlights shook violently in their hands. Not smooth, not steady, like they were drunk or being controlled. Suddenly, bang, one of them fired a shot into the air. I bit down so hard I tasted blood just to keep from screaming. I was trembling from fear, from the cold, from everything. Every instinct I had told me to stay still, to disappear. I don't know how long I stayed crouched there. Eventually, I dared to peek again, and they were gone. Just the car, just the dark. I thought it was over until the beams of light returned, closer this time, almost like they were playing hide and seek with me. With shaking fingers, I pulled out my phone and whispered to the 911 operator. 3 people around my car, one with a gun. Please send someone now. I can't remember how long I waited. But when I finally saw those flashing red and blue lights in the distance, I bolted toward the cruiser, crying and soaked to the bone. The moment the headlights swept over the field, the 3 figures vanished, silently, as if they were never there. When I told the officer what happened, he didn't seem surprised. Just nodded, asked a few questions, and told me I could leave once the rain slowed down. No search, no report. Nothing. I don't know who they were. I don't know why they were out there in the desert in the rain circling my broken down car. All I know is that ever since that night I've never driven alone through the desert after dark again. Story 3. The Town with No Name. I never believed in ghost towns or time distortion stories. Not until I lived through one. My name is Mary. A few months ago, my best friend Carol and I were driving from Florida back to New Jersey after visiting some friends. We planned to drive through the night blasting music, chatting to pass the time and save a hotel stay. Everything was going fine, until I started getting a backache and suggested we pull over for gas, stretch our legs, and maybe grab something to eat. We turned off the highway into a small roadside town. The sign claimed it was a tourist stop, supposedly full of shops and rest stations. But the moment we entered, I knew something was off. The town was empty. Not a single person on the streets. The buildings weren't exactly abandoned, but they looked worn, old, and somehow wrong, like they belonged to another world. The whole place felt surreal, off balance, like we had stepped into a dream. We stopped at a convenience store. Inside, everything seemed fairly normal. Carol rummaged around looking for her favorite drink, but couldn't find it. She got irritated, and I told her we'd check somewhere else. Meanwhile, I picked up a bottle of Gatorade and headed to the cashier. The woman behind the counter looked to be in her early 30s, long brown hair, tall frame. But what struck me was that she was wearing suspenders. Like old-fashioned denim overalls kind of suspenders, not something you see every day. I paid and walked out with Carol. Directly across the street was another convenience store. Carol insisted on checking it. We walked in and my heart nearly stopped. The cashier was the same woman, same face, same hair, same height, identical. I froze. She met my eyes and clearly noticed my reaction. When I asked, "Do you have a twin sister?" she answered coldly, "I'm an only child." I pulled Carol outside in a panic. She brushed it off, saying I was probably just confused. But I wasn't. I know what I saw. I dragged her back to the first store, but the woman there was now someone entirely different. Shorter, lighter hair, probably in her 50s. There was no way it was the same person. We decided to just fuel up and get out of that town. The gas station was empty, no other cars in sight. We went inside the small shop to pay, and I got this creeping feeling. Like none of it was real. Like everything around us was a set and we weren't supposed to be there. We were inside for maybe a few minutes, but when we stepped back out, I nearly screamed. The gas station was suddenly packed. Cars everywhere. People walking, pumping gas, staring. It was like they had materialized out of thin air. Every single person was staring at us. No one said a word, just silent, heavy gazes. This time, even Carol felt it. She said nothing, just grabbed my arm and walked quickly back to the car. I didn't care about food anymore. I just wanted to leave. We pulled back onto the highway, putting that bizarre town behind us. Neither of us spoke for the next 10 minutes, until a gray Toyota Sienna minivan passed us. I remember the spiderweb crack on its windshield and deep scratches along the side. Carol joked that it looked like it had been through war. A few minutes later, the same minivan passed us again. Identical. Same crack. Same scratches. We both saw it. Carol whispered, "What the hell is going on?" She looked ready to have a full-blown panic attack. I floored the gas pedal. My heart was pounding. When I glanced at the GPS, I realized over an hour had passed since we left the gas station, but we'd only been driving for 15 minutes. That's impossible. I don't know what that town was. A time loop, an illusion, or worse, a portal into something else. All I know is that we were lucky to get out. Story 4. The night that wouldn't end. I never believed in time loops or reality glitches. Not until that night. Earlier that evening, Carol and I had just left a strange little town out east, the kind of place where everything felt warped, repetitive, and filled with people who didn't seem quite human. We drove straight into the night, desperate to shake the feeling that we were trapped in some alternate dimension. Carol had dozed off in the passenger seat while I kept driving, struggling to stay alert. The road ahead was swallowed in darkness, broken only by the steady hum of tires on asphalt and the headlights sweeping through the trees. I remember that stretch of road clearly, a remote highway cutting through sparse forest. No houses, no lights, no signs. Just us and the night. And then I saw it. A car pulled off to the shoulder. Its hazard lights blinked faintly. Out of instinct, I slowed down, thinking maybe someone needed help. As we passed it, I glanced out the window. It was a gray Toyota Sienna. Cracked windshield like a spider web. Deep scratches along the side. It was the same van we'd seen twice already after leaving the ghost town. My stomach turned cold. But things were only getting worse. 10 minutes later, a vehicle started coming up behind us, then slowly passed us in the left lane. Same Sienna, same crack, same color, same scratches. I froze. White-knuckled the steering wheel. My heart slammed against my ribs. Carol stirred awake as I swerved slightly to avoid a pothole. She looked out the window, then whispered, "It's back." I didn't respond, just nodded. Every time we thought we'd left it behind, it appeared again in front of us, like that van wasn't bound by space or time. An hour later, we pulled into a small roadside rest stop. I needed air. Carol needed a bathroom. But as we stepped out of the car, I realized we had already stopped here before. Same dim sign, same red pickup parked in the corner, same man smoking under the tree. We were in a loop. I opened Google Maps to check our location history. The GPS showed we were still on the right route. No indication that we had backtracked, but my memory knew better. We panicked and rushed back into the car. I drove non-stop. Carol kept glancing over her shoulder, terrified the Sienna would return. Eventually, the GPS told us to turn left, a side road that would reconnect with the main highway. I didn't think. I just turned. Carol held her breath. As we rolled onto the narrow path, a strong gust of wind ripped through the trees. Leaves spun in circles. Branches leaned toward the car like something was pushing them from above. And then we saw it. The gray Sienna, parked sideways across the road. But this time, it wasn't alone. A man stood behind it, back turned toward us, gray coat, bald head, completely still. I hit the brakes. Time seemed to stop. Then, he turned around. He had no face, just smooth, pale skin, no eyes, no nose, no mouth. I screamed, threw the car into reverse, whipped around and gunned it down the road. Carol was nearly in tears. We drove like hell, like we were trying to escape a nightmare made real. And suddenly, we were back on the highway. No GPS reroute, no explanation, just out. I don't know what we encountered. A warped dimension, a presence playing with time. All I know is, I never want to drive at night again. 4 stories, 4 warnings that not everything strange comes with an explanation. Sometimes reality is as thin as a curtain, and behind it lie things none of us were ever meant to see. If you've ever had a chilling moment or witnessed something beyond understanding, share it in the comments. I'll keep telling these stories so that others know. Sometimes the truth is scarier than anything we could imagine.